I am filing this account voluntarily, and I want that noted in the header. The Incident Review Board did not compel me. I am submitting it because the record as it currently stands contains several factual gaps that I believe reflect poorly on the breath assessment flotilla as an institution, and I would prefer the gaps be filled by me rather than by whoever writes the summary report. I have already spoken to the documentation clerk. She was sympathetic. She said the header would note that I came forward on my own. I will begin with what I believed to be true at the time. The cognitive dissolution protocol is one of our most reliable instruments. I do not say this defensively. It is simply accurate. The flotilla developed it over many assessment cycles, calibrated across 11 recognized cognitive architectures, and the results have been consistent. Sustained exposure to the base frequency, a low, grinding, rhythmic oscillation in the 38 Hz range, layered with a pressure wave modulation we refer to internally as the secondary envelope, produces measurable cognitive stress in every tested subject within approximately 4 minutes. Most subjects request termination of the session before the 6-minute mark. A few have lasted 9. The record, held by a Velsorath military engineer with an unusual pain threshold, is 11 minutes and 40 seconds, after which she was found sitting very still and staring at the wall, and remained that way for some time. I have administered the protocol 47 times. I have never had a session run past 12 minutes. I want that context to be part of the record. The human, her name was Rena Solberg, a survey authority technician, taken aboard during a standard assessment sweep of the Outer Reach Transit Corridor, was processed through intake in the ordinary way. Cooperative, politely unimpressed with the vessel, she accepted the examination room assignment without comment, which was itself slightly unusual. Most subjects have something to say about the examination room. It is a small room. The lighting is deliberately flat. I noted her composure in my intake form and filed it under baseline temperament, unremarkable. I will not be using that phrase again. The session began at the standard parameters. I activated the oscillation array from the observation alcove, confirmed the secondary envelope was cycling correctly, and settled in. Through the observation aperture, I could see the human seated on the room's low cot, her hands resting on her knees. She was looking at the emitter housing on the far wall, with what I took to be mild curiosity. Subjects often look at the emitter initially. It is a natural response. They are trying to identify the source of the discomfort. At 2 minutes, she had not shifted her posture. At 4 minutes, she had not shifted her posture, and I became aware that she was producing a sound. Low, continuous, without precise pitch. I checked the room's audio feed and confirmed it. She was humming, not in distress, not in the irregular, involuntary way subjects sometimes vocalize under stress. She was humming in a measured, unhurried pattern that bore a loose structural relationship to the oscillation frequency I was running. I increased the secondary envelope by 11%. She adjusted her hum slightly and tapped the cot rail twice with 2 fingers. At 6 minutes, I flagged the session for supervisor review. My supervisor, Assessment Commander Velrith, a breath of considerable experience and considerable confidence in the dissolution protocol, reviewed the feed from the corridor terminal and told me to increase the primary frequency by 8% and hold for another 10 minutes. I followed this instruction. The human stopped humming long enough to tilt her head at a slight angle, the way you might tilt your head when something changes in a piece of music you are listening to, and then resumed. At the 9-minute mark, she raised one hand in the direction of the observation aperture. This has never happened before. In 47 sessions, no subject has ever raised a hand at the observation aperture. The aperture is one way. She should not have known it was there. I have since been informed by our hull systems technician that the aperture has a faint reflective quality when the room lighting is configured a certain way, and that a sufficiently attentive subject might notice the slight difference in the wall surface. I have submitted a separate maintenance note about this. I opened the audio channel. She asked, in a calm and conversational tone, What instrument was producing the subharmonic? I did not know what to say to this. I told her it was an assessment array. She nodded as though this were a perfectly satisfying answer, and asked whether the secondary envelope, she did not call it that, she used the phrase, that lower wobble underneath, was intentional, or a resonance artifact of the room. I told her it was intentional. She said that was impressive, because getting a clean resonance loop in a room that size without reflective interference was not easy, and whoever had designed it knew what they were doing. I ended the session at the 11-minute mark, not because she requested termination. She did not request termination. I ended it because I needed to think. I went to my supervisor. I explained what had happened. Velfrith reviewed the full audio and, when it was over, was quiet for a time. Then she said we should run the session again at full amplitude, with the room pressure reduced by 12%, and see how the human responded to the combined effect. I agreed that this was a reasonable escalation. I did not mention that I had a developing suspicion we were making a mistake, because I was not certain enough to say so, and I did not want to be noted in the record as the officer who lost confidence in the protocol over one anomalous session. The second session ran for 18 minutes. At the 4-minute mark, the human lay down on the cot, put her hands behind her head, and closed her eyes. At the 9-minute mark, I believed she might be asleep. The audio feed confirmed slow, regular breathing. She was not asleep. I could see small movements in her fingers, the way people move their fingers when they are listening to something. But she was, by any observable measure, at rest. At the 14-minute mark, she spoke without opening her eyes. She said the pressure drop was a nice touch, and asked whether it could be held at that level, because it helped her think. I ended the session. I told Velrith what had happened, and then I did the reference query I should have done before the first session. It took approximately 40 seconds. The results were not what I expected. The breath dissolution protocol's base oscillation, 38 Hz, secondary envelope cycling at a 6:4 ratio, low pressure ambient, is, within the margin of acoustic measurement error, structurally identical to a category of human musical tradition practiced in the northern coastal regions of one of their smaller continents. A slow, repetitive, single-voice drone, accompanied by low percussive figures. The query returned several examples. I listened to 2 of them. They sounded, in a way I found difficult to articulate in my incident report, exactly like my assessment array. I pulled Rena Solberg's intake file. Her origin documentation listed a coastal settlement in the relevant region. A notation in the cultural background field, filled in by our intake clerk from her travel documents, said, in reference to a family member, traditional music practitioner, northern folk genre. Her grandmother, apparently, had been quite dedicated to it. I spent a long time looking at that notation. Then I opened the audio channel to the examination room, where the human was still lying on the cot in the now silent room, apparently waiting to see what we would try next. I asked her what she had thought the sessions were. She considered this question seriously. Then she said that she had assumed, given the careful acoustic calibration, that we were making some kind of cultural accommodation gesture. She said she had found it thoughtful, a little impersonal. She had hoped someone might come in to sit with her, but thoughtful. She said she was sorry if she had done something wrong by responding to it. I told her she had not done anything wrong. She asked if the sessions would continue. I told her no. She said that was fine, and asked if there was any chance of a blanket, because the pressure drop had left the room a little cool. I arranged for the blanket. The incident report, as I filed it, is 11 pages. It covers the protocol parameters, the session logs, the audio records, the reference query results, and the intake file discrepancy. It does not, in my estimation, fully account for the way Velrith looked when I showed her the acoustic comparison, or for the particular quality of quiet that settled over the observation alcove during the second session, when we both understood, without saying so, that we had spent 18 minutes playing a woman her grandmother's music and waiting for her to crack. I noted in the conclusion, that the dissolution protocol may require expanded cultural database cross-referencing before deployment in human assessment contexts. Velrith approved the report without comment. She added one line in the supervisor annotation field. It read, "Agreed. Update the database." Rena Solberg was processed through exchange protocols 6 days later and returned to Survey Authority custody. Her official exit notation, filled in by our intake clerk, reads, "Cooperative. No significant distress observed." The clerk asked me if that was accurate. I told her it was the most accurate thing in the file.